What up, nerds? Bujo Head Joni here. I have been bullet journaling since 2017, and I would like to share my April 2022 weekly spreads with you. So, weekly spreads. Now, if you saw my monthly spread video, you'll know that because I start my weeks on a Monday, I have this strange little half week that I need to fill in here. So we have my entertainment spread on the left, and then we have Friday, Saturday, Sunday with one extra column for sort of notes, weekly tasks, that sort of stuff. I'm using the same basic spread that I've been using for a little while, with the habits on the top and my tasks on the bottom. Habits are things I do either daily or weekly or a couple times a week, and tasks are things that need to be done once and then they're done. Or they're done like once a month. So certain things like, I'll write down my rent on the 1st, stuff like that. Whereas habits are like, I'll exercise in the morning. Here's exactly what I'm doing for my exercise this morning. So I have a set number of habits. So I've already decided for this month how many I have, and so that is what determines the height of that top section there in blue. But the tasks I generally will leave a little bit larger. I don't generally take up all of that space, but just in case, I have enough space for that. Got our header in the dark blue, and the dark blue also is used for the drop shadow, which the two things that make, so we're doing a very similar spread to March, and the two things that make this different, that make this faster to put together, and you actually can compare the lengths of the videos for the weeklies for April and then the weeklies for March, is that I don't outline the drop shadow, and the minor headers don't get their own very specific header. So instead, I'm using this sort of like file folder tabby thing for the minor headers, whereas in March, there were whole separate, very intricate banners, and very small. A little fiddly because they were so small and so intricate. But with this month, I'm basically drawing a bunch of rectangles, not triangles, rectangles, and filling in the headers, and then maybe doing little doodles. And that's the thing, extra this month are the doodles, whereas in March, there's nothing like that. So it all depends on how complicated you want to get, and how much time you want to spend on it. I know, especially for my very pretty March spreads, I find them very relaxing to put together, but sometimes you need something quicker, simpler, and sometimes you want something kind of in between, like these. So we're using the blue for the outline. Do a quick outline. And now sometimes when I'm going over the crease, I will actually separate out each box. So I would keep those 3 columns on the right hand side. I would keep them completely separate. But for this month, I actually have them go into the crease and seem to still be connected to the rest of the week there. This can get a little wonky, especially if you're in a hurry. Sometimes lines don't really come out correctly, and you do have to decide, especially because I do have vertical lines that separate out the columns for each week. You have to decide which page you're going to put that line on. So I had decided to put it on the right hand side, just because that was a little bit easier. You'll see here I'm basically putting it in the crease there, but it is on the right hand page. In general, I would not recommend messing with the crease. Things just get wonky in there, and the spacing's not quite right, because especially if you're spacing everything out by the dots are not in the crease. They're like right next to it. So you've got a little bit extra room there that can make the spacing kind of not work out correctly. And there we have our first full week. Now, one thing I did, because I knew I was not going to want to space out everything beforehand, is I'm using several techniques to figure out the spacing without having to draw everything in beforehand. So the very first thing you saw me do there was to get the height of those boxes from the previous week. And then I have figured out exactly how far apart each of the days are, and I'm counting those out on the top, and then on the bottom I'm actually pulling that same spacing down from the top. So basically everything is referential. There is a danger that you'll be one off on something and then everything else will be, off as well. But it generally works out okay. You can also sort of check your work, because these pages, while they're not really see-through at all, you can see them a little bit, especially darker lines like this blue or say a black, for instance. And so once we have the outline of the boxes, super easy to go in with the drop shadow. And then I had decided to alternate the color colors. So in 1 week the blue will go on the top, the next it will go on the bottom, and so on and so forth. I was actually checking if I had actually alternated, because if I hadn't, then they were going to follow the same pattern. So generally I like to enforce patterns like that, and I like to switch things up, but as long as it follows some kind of rule for myself, that's what is really important. So now we have the major colors. We're going to fill in these headers. Now in the very first column, the top one, I label habits, and I keep a list of the habits that I like to do every day, every week, etc. And then the bottom one is tasks. And then along the top, I have the days of the week, so Monday through Sunday. And on the bottom, I have their actual dates. So that is the 11th through the 17th for this one, for example. I am throwing the week big header up at the top in the darker blue. And then we have little duckies, which are very simple. So a half circle for the body, a circle for the head, and a little triangle for the beak. I'm just using the mild liner there. I am not putting any details, so it's just sort of the hint of a duck. And then I am throwing in little raindrops. And if you'll notice from the previous weeks, I'm actually alternating where the ducks and the raindrops go, so that the blue and the yellow are more distributed evenly throughout the page. And then I have a very light gray to separate out all the weeks. And then we start it all over again. So it's the second full week. We have another full week, and then we have an almost full week of 6 days instead of 7 for the very end of the month. Now I could keep rambling on, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and let you just enjoy these last 2 weeks. And I'll come find you back at the end. last week basically under your belt, I will return to enjoy the largest duck you've ever seen. Didn't really have a plan for all the little duckies, so they are just randomly sized. Sometimes I like to think of the larger ones as little mama ducks. But in this spread, we have several different sizes. So some itsy bitsy ones, following after medium size. Or maybe the large one is just very, very close. And we'll finish it off, separating out all the days. But those are my weekly spreads. For April 2022. Thanks a lot. Bye.